People are asking me all the time, hey, Marco, how's your Airbnb going? And really what I think they're asking is, how much money are you making? Hey, everyone, this is Marco Randazzo with 8Z Real Estate. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast, Sold by Marco, giving you the current information you've got to know as a buyer, seller, or investor here in Denver. If you haven't done so, please do me a favor, click the subscribe button, and on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about my first year as an Airbnb host, and I'm especially excited about this episode because I have a special guest joining me, the amazing, the beautiful, the one and only Lizzie Randazzo. It's going to be great. We're going to talk about how we started up at Airbnb and give you a rundown of our first year as Airbnb hosts. We'll tell you how we started it. We'll tell you how it's going, the process of getting it up and running, weird stories, how much it costs to run, and yes, how much money it makes. If you're thinking about getting an Airbnb one day, or if you're ever curious to just know more of the behind the scenes of how it works, then I hope you find this podcast episode to be a helpful resource and interesting and fun to watch. So let's do it. The first thing you've got to know is your ability to secure a short-term rental license in your city. You may know that in the city of Denver, Airbnb rules are pretty strict. You cannot operate an Airbnb if the home is not your primary residence. We could go into more detail about that, but let's just say there's some people who've tried to trick the system by trying to say the home is their primary residence when really it is not. This is a bad idea. Do not do it. People have gone to jail over this, but in the city of Arvada, which is a suburb of Metro Denver that I live in, they started allowing short-term rental licenses only in the last few years. You can now short-term rent a home that is not your primary residence for up to 2/3 of the year. Meaning, if a guest is staying in your home for less than 30 days at a time, you can legally have 2/3 of the whole year filled up with those short-term rental days. So suffice it to say, we found the process of securing a short-term rental license from the city of Arvada to be pretty simple. I'll put a link to the city website in the description so you can read about more of that if you want to. Last thing on this topic, if there's an HOA in your community, make sure to check to see if they have restrictions against operating a short-term rental in that community because a lot of them just won't allow it. Okay, the next thing, let's talk about the home itself. So there's typically 3 ways that you can make this work. Keep in mind in the city of Arvada, the great thing is you don't have to live there to be able to have the whole house as a short-term rental versus the city of Denver, for example. If you own a home and it's your primary residence, you can Airbnb it from time to time or when you're out of town or part of the home, but you have to be able to prove you live there as your primary residence. So here's the first way you can do it if you want to. You can straight up buy an investment property and put the whole thing on Airbnb. Just like that. Remember to do it this way if you're not buying it in cash. So if you're getting a loan, most lenders will require you to put 20 to 25% minimum as your down payment. So that's the first way to do it. Pretty straightforward. You just buy it. The second way you can do it is to buy a home as your primary residence and Airbnb part of your property. I'll give you 3 quick examples about how this could work. I had a buyer who was looking for a property recently in Denver with 2 separate entrances to create 2 units up and down in the same home. We found it. We got under contract. He recently closed and now he lives in one part of it and he short-term rents the other part of the home. Legally in Denver, you can do this. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, recently I had a friend who closed on a home in Longmont, and they're going to create a separate entrance into their basement to create that space as an Airbnb. And the last example of this, last year I helped some friends of mine sell their home, and then I helped them buy some land up here in Arvada. They're building a dream home. It's amazing. It's going to be incredible. And part of it is they're building a studio apartment above their detached garage out back. And they're going to use that as an Airbnb. It's on their property, but it's not attached to the home. So there's 3 quick ways that you could do an Airbnb as part of your property. The third way you can do this, and this is the way we did it, is this. You buy a primary residence, you live in it for a while, and then after a few years, when you go to move into your next home, you keep the first one and convert it into an Airbnb. I'm a big fan of doing it this way for a couple reasons. One, when you buy that first home, you have the option to get into it for a low down payment. You can get into it for as little as 3% down in some cases. That's what I did. You can put more money down if you have it, but it's nice to be able to have the option. Another reason I like this option is you can get to know the home itself. You can get a solid feel for the home, the utilities, the costs to run it, the neighborhood, the noises, like all of that stuff, because you've slept in it, you've lived in it. So you'll have a pretty good idea of not just your numbers about the home, but like a description of the neighborhood and its feeling and all that. Basically, I think you have a better shot at having less surprises this way than if you just buy an investment property and stick it on the market. When you keep your existing home, this is a great way to go. You got to keep in mind, it's going to require more money in the bank to do it, because if you're thinking about moving up in home or moving into your next home, keep your first one. If you're getting a loan, most lenders will want to see more money in reserves, typically around 6 months of your mortgage payment on your current home that you plan to flip into a short-term rental, plus 6 months of reserves for the mortgage payment on the next home you're going to move into. And this is on top of showing proof of funds for your down payment. So basically, you got to calculate what are the costs of both my mortgages times 6 plus my down payment and closing costs on the new home. That's about what you got to have in the bank. Okay, so do you have that money? Great. If you don't, you can at least put together a savings plan for what it's going to take. So you can put a plan into action and work towards that goal. As with all things real estate, there's a lot of nuances with this. Lenders will have different access to different kinds of loan products that are available to you based on your income, debts, and credit score and all that stuff. You just got to keep in mind, even though there's different kind of loan products with different factors out there, it's very important to consult with a solid, professional, local lender who can help you understand all of your options here. But this basically gives you some framework for what you can probably expect if you're going to go this route. Next up, Lizzie is going to join me and we're going to talk about furniture and decorating. Yay!
Yay! This was a lot of fun to do. There were so many things to pick out, so many decisions to make, but because our son Jesse was only 4 months old, when we were doing all of this, we definitely opted for convenience. Oftentimes we would do Target pickups. If they had it at Target, we definitely went there first.
Yep. Target stuff looks good. It's not always the cheapest, but gets the job done.
Yep, for sure. So first, we had a vision. We knew that we wanted to make our Airbnb really, really high quality. We wanted to be in the top 10% of homes. And so in order to do that, what we did was we researched the different homes in the area, and we could tell pretty quickly what the standards were. We knew that we wanted to make ours really one of the very best in the area. It's really important to know what you need to do to make your house stand out from the rest of the competition. Initially, when we lived at the house is a 5-bedroom house, but not every bedroom had a bed in it. So there was a lot of things that we needed to buy. So we needed to figure out which items we wanted to leave and then what things we wanted to take with us. So our kitchen table really was the perfect size, shape, color for the dining room. And so we thought, let's leave that. We'll buy something else when we get into our new house. We had just purchased a really, really beautiful couch from Article, and we decided, we're not going to leave that. We're definitely going to take that with us.
Yep.
And so instead picked out still a really great couch from American Furniture Warehouse, and it was just much easier because we were able to look at what's a great price point instead of what is the optimal style based on our preference.
Yeah, so you can do a combination of used furniture and new furniture. I think we all kind of can tell based on photos of other Airbnbs when it's like all old furniture. We mostly just didn't want ours to look like that. We wanted it to look new, wanted to look fancy.
Yeah, and that hodgepodge put together for us, that was really important for our style, the aesthetic that we had in mind. We wanted things to really flow well, which meant buying a lot of new items. Mm-hmm. We decided we wanted to go with a really strong theme. We thought that would help us stand out from the competition. And also from a decorating standpoint, I felt like it was easier to piece things together based on all these different rooms and the different themes that they would have. So the theme that we went with was Colorado Adventure House with Peloton.
Colorado Adventure House with Peloton.
Yes. And that is the actual title that we use on the Airbnb website.
Yeah. Basically, we're targeting posh parents.
Yes.
Right. We wanted like families traveling together, families that wanted a nice space with lots of room, like for the kids to play up and down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. With the way the house is set up, it's definitely ideal for 2 families traveling together. We get a variety of different people, but we often see families traveling together.
Yeah. And having just had a kid, we were thinking like, what are these parents going to want? pack and play, a high chair, a baby gate, things that the parents would want to have so that they had an ideal experience at the house.
Yep.
So Colorado Adventure House with Peloton, let's tell you about the themes of the 5 rooms. This is where we spent the most time coming up with the themes specifically, and then the rest of the house we just tried to make really nice, and Lizzie is going to tell us about those themes.
So the primary is the ski room, which we have some vintage skis hanging in there. We have pictures of different lodge themes in there. Very cool. Just cozy. Still has a little bit of like Norwegian vibe in it. Definitely like Scandinavian feel.
It does have a Scandinavian feel.
And
now you say it.
And the camping room, just down the hall, is one of the main kids' rooms. So that has bunk beds in it. And it also has a tent, and it has a bunch of kids' toys. It has a little reading nook in there. We've gotten lots of good feedback about that from parents, that it's a really great little play space for the kids.
Lots of room for activities.
That's right. And then next to that is the paint mines room, which if you are not aware of what the paint mines are in East Colorado, definitely worth a Google. Very cool rock formations, really bright colors. So that was really neat to like hone into that. We have pictures of the paint mines in there. And then we have, we went with like some pinks and different like things that they have in the rock formations. And that also we explained that what the paint mines were with a little hanging picture on the wall.
Yeah, and there's some wallpaper in there that's all like paint miney, which was very difficult to align, but worth it in the end. So.
Yes. And then downstairs, there's 2 more bedrooms. We have the 14er room. For that one, we put pictures of a bunch of different 14ers all around the room. And then we also have the Constellations room, which is another room geared towards kids. It also has bunk beds, and we have this really cool light projector so you can see different constellations, and it's just kind of a fun kids room.
Yeah, super trippy, but like pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so those are a little bit about the 5 themes. If you want to see more about our Airbnb specifically, I'm going to put a link in the description for this podcast. So if you're curious, you can go look at more pictures. But really, Lizzie was a big part of helping the vision for this come together, and she did a fantastic job. So thanks, babe.
Thank you.
You may be wondering, why the Peloton? Well, when we were doing research for starting up the Airbnb, I heard about this host who left his Peloton at the Airbnb and used it as a marketing tool. And I was like, that's a cool idea. Probably not a lot of hosts are doing that. I was like, Lizzie, we should leave our Peloton here. And she was like, that's a great idea. And I was like, yeah, and then we can get the new Peloton for our next house, the one with the swivel screen, which we didn't have. She's like, even better. So the Peloton brand also happened to align with our goal of making the Airbnb like a higher end in the realm of the Airbnbs that are out there. So we put it into our description. We've had a lot of guests happy to use the Peloton. We've secured all 5-star reviews, and we are super grateful for that. So we've got the home, we've got the short-term rental license, we've got the home furnished and decorated. Okay, so how do we get the vibes of this home to translate so it's seen by our target audience? And the answer is this: high quality photos. I am lucky to be married to a professional photographer. Lizzie and I did wedding photography together for many years. We were able to do this in-house. But even if we were hiring this out, it's not that expensive. You can get high quality photos for your Airbnb for like $500. It's a very low cost, especially for something that makes such an impact. It could be less or more depending on like where you are and who you hire. My point is this: high quality photos are one of the least expensive and most important parts of this entire process, because as everyone knows, nobody goes to like take a tour of the Airbnb before you book it. You can only tell by the reviews and the photos. Go look on Airbnb around at your neighborhood and look around all the listings. You'll see lots of them with cheap photos, and you'll be thinking to myself, I could do this better myself with an iPhone. And most of the time that's probably true. Now let's talk about getting the listing up on the Airbnb platform. Some hosts choose to list their short-term rental on a variety of short-term rental websites like Vrbo or HomeAway. We did consider doing this, but to do that, you also have to have a service that connects your calendar to all the platforms at once. It's kind of just a step we didn't want to deal with, honestly. And we felt that we could get enough business just from Airbnb. So we started there, and with the way it's been going, I don't think we're going to change anytime soon. It was pretty easy to set up. So you set up your hosting account with Airbnb. You show that you have a short-term rental license. You register the business as an LLC. You make sure you have a business banking account set up. And once everything's set up and in place, you're ready to go. And now we can get to the fun part, which is this: pricing. Obviously, this is part of the equation you're going to want to start running numbers for long before you even decide if you're going to do this. Basically, last year, around this time, we had friends over for the 4th of July. They have 5 Airbnb units. And we're talking about the numbers you can charge for the nightly rate of a single family home. I was like, we should do this. And my friend was like, yeah, that's what I've been telling you. So glad we listened to her. So we looked in Airbnb in our area and saw that for nice single family homes, some places were charging like $500 a night for holiday weekends and busy weekends. And you start doing the math and you're like, So we thought we could basically charge around $300 a night, maybe a little less for weekdays, like $250, maybe a little more for weekends, like $350 a night, and much more for holidays and generally weekends that have like a higher demand for travel. So for example, October, I was pretty surprised by this, but in October, Colorado has typically a very high travel demand that you can charge a lot for those weekends. Now, how exactly did we decide on our pricing? Well, I'll tell you how we did not do it. And that is that we did not follow Airbnb's suggested nightly rates. Their suggestions are not great. And here's why. Airbnb makes its money on the booking fees. Therefore, they're motivated to get bookings. So they end up recommending rates that are typically lower than fair market value for your home. It's clear to me, like, they don't have the host's best financial interest in mind here. However, that's like my only complaint about using them. Their platform is actually really good. It's easy to navigate, track, and set everything up. It's easy to go in and like put in the rules about the length of your stay and all that stuff. It syncs up great with our platform for pricing that we do use called PriceLabs, which I'll talk about later. And it's easier for our cleaner to get in there and be in our profile, access the calendar for the turnover schedule. Overall, it's great. It's just not great at recommending pricing, at least not in my experience. I digress. Back to the money. So first, we use a resource called AirDNA. It's great. You can type in any city, and for a very low cost, you can basically buy the data for a specific zip code to give you helpful information on the demand in that area, the occupancy rates, what hosts are charging, etc. You can see some of this data on there for free, but you do have to pay to download specific data for a zip code, but it's very cheap and it's well worth it. Next, we needed to decide on a third-party service that would help us navigate how to price the home depending on the day, the time of year, the demand, and all of that. There's a lot of great options out there. This is called dynamic pricing. Basically, this is the technology used by hotels and airlines to price their bookings and put the rates kind of based on the demand. And we researched several options. Ultimately, we landed on a service called PriceLabs. They seem to be the best for what we needed. It's really inexpensive. It's like $20 a month. Lots of other tools out there cost more than that, or they charge like a percentage of your earnings, things like that. PriceLabs for us was the clear winner. I have been pretty surprised, happily, by some of the high dollar amounts that guests will pay for. For example, like I thought for sure that in July, 4th of July would be the highest suggested nightly rate, but it was high, but it wasn't the highest. The third weekend in July was suggested to be like a pricing on the level with Christmas Eve. I was like, what? And guess what? It got booked, but I wouldn't have thought to price that high. So even though this tool is very good, it still does require a human touch to go in there and play around with the pricing whenever you need to. If you're not getting as many bookings as you want, you probably should lower your prices manually. And the other side of that coin is if you're getting booked up really, really fast, you probably aren't charging enough. So it does take some trial and error to kind of figure out your sweet spot. We're still kind of figuring ours out, but it is nice for us going into the second year because now we have a baseline for the first year for our specific house. Now we can go in and continue to adjust and fine tune this accordingly. So how much money do we actually make? I'm going to tell you right now. Our average nightly rate for the last year is $368 per night. And our occupancy rate has a rolling average of 63%. So it's pretty much perfect, given that in Arvada, you can only short-term rent for 2/3 of the year. So I'm pretty happy with those numbers. Most of the reason I think we did have success is that the home is a good value and we market it well. And we've made a commitment to be responsive hosts and be helpful to our guests to earn their 5-star review. Anyway, let's go ahead and do some math. $368 times 19, which is our 63% occupancy rate average for the month, is about $7,000. Cha-ching! Now you might be like, $7,000, dude, you're fucking rich. It get rained on a bills. It's not actually as amazing as it sounds. So that's the average income per month, but let's look at our average expenses. Our mortgage is $2,200. That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Our utilities are about $400 a month. That's the water, power, and internet. Other expenses are about $200 a month. That's our Peloton subscription, pest control, yard maintenance, that kind of stuff. So now we're down to $4,200. Oh, wait, but you got to pay the tax man. And you got to pay taxes on that first number, the $7,000 you brought in for the month. Now, this is assuming nothing else goes wrong with your Airbnb. But wait, it gets worse. For all the things we've had to fix or replace or upkeep, they've averaged out to be about $250 per month. So after all that, we are down to an average monthly net profit of $2,200. This is an average. It's not always like this. Some months we do bring in a lot more, like peak summer months and holiday seasons. But some months, like in the spring, don't bring as much. March was the only month where we didn't actually cover our mortgage, and we actually lost money that month. So it kind of depends. Overall, we are in the green. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Now, part of the reason it does cash flow pretty well is we bought it in 2017 when prices were a lot lower. So our mortgage is lower than if you were to straight up buy that same property today. But honestly, we're not even doing this for the cash flow. Even if it just broke even, didn't cash flow at all, that would still be a win because you're getting your mortgage paid for while you are earning equity on your home as it goes up. If you're a real estate investor, you understand how big of an impact this has long term. But if you're not, or if you're still wrapping your head around this whole thing, let that sink in for a minute. Even if you break even on your investment property and earn no cash flow, your housing payment is being paid for while you benefit from all of the appreciation and the value of your home. Long term, this is a big deal. Before we wrap up, I'm going to say a couple of final tips. Your cleaner. This is one of the most important parts of this entire equation. Hire a good cleaner. We made the mistake of first hiring a cleaner who had great rates. We did like her. She said she had a team. She was really nice, but her communication wasn't fantastic. Ultimately, it didn't work out. So after that, we found another cleaner who was a lot more expensive, but overall, she's been a much higher quality cleaner and better communicator. Now we're in a good rhythm and flow with her and her team. It's very important because your cleaner is like your first line of defense. They're on the front lines. They're going to tell you if you're low on toilet paper, if something's broken, if something's missing, if the whole house smells like weed, or if a toilet's not flushing, or if someone has driven their car into your garage door and put a huge dent in it and left without telling you. And yes, by the way, all of those things have happened to us. Ah, the joys of being a host. So there are other parts to this process, but for the purposes of this podcast, I just wanted to hit the main topics that I thought might be helpful for you to understand if you're curious at all about like, what is it like to run an Airbnb? There are a lot of people out there doing this. The market is getting more saturated as short-term rentals become increasingly popular. But I believe that in any business, there's always room for the best. Take real estate, for example. I got into arguably one of the most competitive jobs out there. Everyone knows like 10 realtors. Like really, they do. Still, my business is working out great for me. And as there are more and more Airbnbs that come on the market, there will always be room for new hosts to get their home into the top 10% of the competition and stand out. There's always room for the best. So if you're wondering, does an Airbnb really work in the city of Arvada? Hopefully this podcast has given you some insight into like what you can expect, and it'll give you some helpful pointers that may lead you to decide if and when the right time is for you to become an Airbnb host yourself. In our experience, people have come for like kids' birthday parties, or they're just visiting family. They're traveling to town for a Red Rock show. They're coming to hike. They're coming to Boulder for like a meditation event. Or they want to be close to Metro Denver, or they want to be close to the mountains, do a day of skiing, a day in Rocky Mountain National Park, you name it. There is a strong market here, and I'm very, very grateful for all the guests who have stayed at our home and left us good reviews. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, that's going to do it. I hope this episode was helpful. There's a lot of nuances to this whole thing, so if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime about anything. I'm always happy to help. Please let me know what you think of this video in the comments on YouTube, or put your questions in there. Or if you're an Airbnb host yourself and you want to put your experience down there in the comments, or put any big pieces that you feel maybe I missed or that are really important, I would honestly love to really hear from you. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you for subscribing to the show and giving it a rating. Again, super appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for subscribing and giving the video a thumbs up if you like it. Signing off here. This podcast is produced by Super Team Media. I'm your host, Marco Randazzo with 8Z Real Estate. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the show, Sold by Marco.